Good evening. Let's summarize the notes on photosynthesis. Before we move on to photosynthesis, we have to briefly talk about a different type of utilizing energy, chemosynthesis. So chemosynthesis uses energy released from chemical reactions. This is rather less evolved way of utilizing energy for metabolic functions, and therefore the prokaryotes, bacteria living in extreme environments near the ocean vents or volcanoes, are actually utilizing chemosynthesis as a way to harvest energy for metabolic processes. Photosynthesis is carried out by autotrophs, which basically symbolizes those types of organisms which are able to harvest energy on their own rather than using food as a source of energy. So plants and some protists, which are single cell or colony forming, such as algae, eukaryotes, are example of autotrophs. Autotrophs are green or have a pigment which works like a green chlorophyll pigment. So photosynthesis, we know, happens in a cell. It's a cellular process. Light energy is captured and converted to produced long-term energy storage in glucose, which then can be utilized in cellular respiration processes to form ATP, the high energy storage, the energy bomb for metabolic reactions. Reactants which are used for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide, which comes from the air. No carbon is coming from the soil, from fertilizers or from the soil itself. The other reactant, water, on the other hand, is coming up from the soil. After we come back to school, we actually will look at some structures in plants under microscopes, of course, which allow carbon dioxide and water to get into the plant. Energy is released, however, energy is not matter, therefore it's not considered a reactant, and what is produced is oxygen as a byproduct, as well as glucose, which stores potential chemical energy in its bonds. Notice it's a reverse of cellular respiration. And I hope you are taking the notes in your notebook. You can create a foldable, which probably would be the best way to take the notes. So if you don't have any materials ready, please get them ready. Thank you. It's a summary. Reactants, carbon dioxide and water with help of light energy, radiant energy. It's not the infrared energy, which we call heat. Glucose and oxygen are produced. So where does it occur? It occurs in organelles. In eukaryotes, notice the double layer membrane right here, and organelles called chloroplasts. And if you will pay attention, we actually have a few specific structures, distinct structures. Thylakoids. This is an important location for one of the phases of photosynthesis. And stroma, which is this part, kind of an equivalent to a cytoplasm of a cell. Obviously, this is not a cell, it's just an organelle in a cell. So thylakoid, important for one of the phases, which requires light, and stroma, required for a dark phase which does not require light, although it does not happen, it occurs at night. We're going to talk about it soon. And notice that as mitochondria, chloroplasts have an inner and outer membrane right here. All right, and here is a kind of a 2D image. The green dye is called chlorophyll, and this is the dye which captures light energy and let the chloroplast utilize the light energy to produce glucose. And here is a 2D image. Thylakoid membranes are stuck in grana. Here's another thylakoid membrane, and stroma. Granum is a singular. All of these are grana from Latin. All right, and here just shows where the photosynthesis is taking place. Obviously in green parts of the plants, not just in the leaves, but in the parts which are green, i.e. the stem as well. Roots. Have you seen green roots? Well, if not, then photosynthesis is not happening in roots. However, roots play an important role to transport water from the soil. Thank you. So notice that carbon dioxide is right here passing through those openings, which are called stomata, S-T-O-M-A-T-A, and we will look at stomata once we are back in school. So carbon dioxide gets through the leaf, water is carried from the roots, it's not shown here, through the leaf's veins, right here to the part of the cell which, of the leaf, which is called mesophyll, and mesophyll is filled with chloroplasts, and chloroplasts contain chlorophyll. Okay, light energy is absorbed through the leaves, it's passing through the leaves. Here it is. Let's go to the next slide, which actually shows the two separate phases of photosynthesis. One of the phases is called light dependent because, yes, guess what? It requires light to get initiated. And second part is light independent because it does not require light, however, does not mean it takes place solely at night. In fact, it can take place for the part of the night, but not the whole night. So, let's look at light dependent phase. What are we seeing here is that light is kind of knocking off, look, water plays an important role in a light dependent reaction because the light energy helps knock off some of the electrons, and we know that what are the electrons needed for? That's right, to produce NADPH or NADH, which is an electron transport system, a molecule necessary for production of ATP later on. So that's the main role. Light is basically necessary to knock off electrons of water molecule. Molecule of water is split up. Notice we have oxygen and hydrogen separate. We also have formation of hydrogen ions, which in turn are necessary to produce ATP during the light dependent reaction. So why is ATP necessary? It's necessary to continue production of glucose at night. So notice that, not at night, in light independent reactions, part of the night, not complete night. So right here we have thylakoid membrane. It's right here. This is a thylakoid surrounded by the membrane. So notice that water, which gets into the leaf, into the mesophyll, gets its electrons knocked off. Hydrogen protons are produced, as well as oxygen. What do you think happens with this oxygen? Well, it leaves thylakoid membrane, and in fact it leaves the chloroplast. And where do you think it may be used up? Yes, in mitochondria for cellular respiration processes, and excess of it obviously is released outside of the cell. So right here we have splitting of water, oxygen are released, picked up by electron transport chain. NADPH is formed, which in turn produces ATP, which plays a role in dark dependent reaction. Right? So now right here, look, NADPH and ATP are produced in light dependent reaction in thylakoid, and they leave thylakoids right here. They actually leave thylakoids into, this is shown right here, they're pumped outside into stroma for light independent reaction. In light independent reaction, which is also called a Calvin cycle, we actually have carbon dioxide taken into chloroplast, and it's being used to produce a glucose, the end product. During that process, obviously ATP is being used up, ATP forms, and NADP plus is being carried on to thylakoid again to start new light dependent phase. So this is a summary. It happens, light dependent reaction happens in thylakoid, water is absorbed through roots, sunlight enters the chloroplast, causing water to split into oxygen and hydrogen protons. Oxygen leaves as a waste, it leaves the chloroplast, but it does remain in the cell because it is being used for cellular respiration mitochondria. Some of it, the excess obviously is released outside of the cell through stomata right here, those openings in the leaves, which we'll look at closely once we're back in school. And NADP plus picks up hydrogen protons, becoming NADPH, which is an important electron transport chain molecule to produce ATP. ATP is necessary to be moved into stroma for light independent reaction, which is also called Calvin cycle. So, light independent reactions, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere enters and is being fixed along with hydrogen protons from NADPH into glucose. NADPA and the ADP plus, after losing the protons, returns to participate in the light independent reactions again in thylakoid membrane. Here is our notice, carbon dioxide enters in, glucose enters out, and during that process our ATP, which was generated in light dependent reaction, now is being used up. NADPH becomes NADP plus again, which only in this form it can pick up electrons in the light dependent phase, and the cycle can continue. Here it is, just a summary. Light hits in, water is split, hydrogen protons are being picked up by NADP plus, NADPH. This is necessary to produce ATP, which will continue helping light independent reaction right here, during which carbon dioxide is absorbed and hydrogen protons from NADPH as well as carbon dioxide are being fixed as glucose, which is released out of the chloroplasts. This is another summary which I would like to see in your foldable with explanations, and that would be it. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.